And good evening, everyone. Welcome to ESS, Empire State Sports and the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Riem, Dave Bartlett, myself, Pete Gosselin, our special guest from WMSA, Messina, New York, Elijah Winfrey. Elijah, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
I know we're going to have a little bit of talk about tonight, but you might as well just start off by, we'll just get it out of the way. You're the morning show host on WMSA, correct?
Yes, I am. I host a drive-in on WMSA from 6 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday.
Oh, that's a good slot to be in. A lot of people waking up and listening to you in the morning. I'm going to turn it over to Joey and we'll get things going.
All right, Elijah. So we're changing spots here because normally I'm on the other side of the question. So we'll give you a chance to talk about yourself a little bit, talk about your show, and some other things that maybe some of your listeners don't know about you. So I guess my first question is, it's 7:00 on Monday night. What time are you getting into the station in the morning for a 6 a.m. start?
Usually I'm getting there for 5:30 in the morning. So here in about 10 minutes, I'm going to have to sleep and my stunt double will have to come in and finish the interview.
So you're not going to watch a football game tonight?
Well, you know, I'll probably try to sneak in a couple minutes if I can. So.
Well, I know you're a football fan. So tonight being the national championship game for college, I'm assuming you're going to have your eyes on that. But why don't you let the people know a little bit about your pathway and how you ended up taking over for a legend and somebody that Pete and Dave and I grew up with Sandy Cook, and how you got that time slot and how you ended up at WMSA.
So it's actually kind of a funny story. So I was actually unemployed for a while, and I was trying to find what I was going to do. And I was a part of a summer youth program where they would try to help match you up with a career that best suited your skill set. And so when they asked me what I wanted to do, I said, well, I want to entertain people. I think I'm somewhat funny, and I try to be as entertaining as I possibly can and give people the information they need. So I would love to do something in either radio or television. And it took about 3 weeks for them to get back to me on what they had found for me. And when they did get back to me, they said, well, Elijah, you got two options. You can work for the Department of Transportation, or you can work for the Rod and Gun Club. And of course, my first question was, how did you get that out of radio and television? But that's what they did. So I chose the Rod and Gun Club. And during my 6 or so weeks at the Rod and Gun Club, I made a lot of good friends, but I didn't get a lot of the work done that they wanted me to do. So an example of one of the situations I'm talking about, when I was at the Rod and Gun Club in Louisville, they had a lawnmower that was attached to a four-wheeler. And this four-wheeler had two speeds on it. It had bunny and it had turtle. And I'm not making that up. That's literally the two speeds that were on it. And we had just spent the 2 weeks prior to this incident I'm talking about, putting up brand new siding on their building. Looks very nice, or it looked very nice.
That don't sound good already.
And so they told me, exactly. So they told me to go out and cut the grass. Now, I'm not an outdoors guy. I would rather stay inside, watch football, play Madden, write one of my scripts, things like that. And I was out there riding this four-wheeler, cutting the grass for about 30 minutes. And then I realized I don't know how to stop. So I just kept mowing the grass for another 30 minutes until the gentleman drove his truck up to where I was and said, Elijah, I think you've cut it about enough. You can go put it up now. So me not thinking anything of it, I drove the four-wheeler right up to the building and I just hopped off instead of shutting the machine off. So now you've got the four-wheeler climbing up the building as they're screaming clutch at me. the only clutch I'm aware of is Tom Brady. So I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. And so when they gave my final report to the folks at the youth program, they said, Elijah is a great person. However, outside work might not be for him. And then, of course, they found me a job at the radio station, and the siding on our building is in tip-top shape.
That's nice.
Well, I did not, you know what? I did not see Rod and Gun Club coming out of you. So that's pretty surprising. So there, we're 2 minutes in. I already learned something. That's perfect. Well, so that's how you ended up at WMSA, but you're not originally from these parts, right?
No, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, which is why I'm wearing my Georgia Tech hat today. So that's originally where I'm from, but I've kind of lived a little bit everywhere in the Southeast. I've lived in Georgia, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Kentucky, and of course now I'm living here in beautiful Messina, New York.
What brought you to Messina? How'd you end up here?
So that's a really long story, but basically what happened was I was living with my grandparents, and I was taking my GED down in Georgia, and my mother had gotten a hold of me, and she had said that she needed help taking care of my brothers and sisters up here in New York. And so I said, okay, I'll come up. She was telling me that she was kind of sick and things weren't looking good for her. And so this is a little hard for me to talk about, but I will, because it might help somebody out there. I wasn't even fully out of Atlanta yet when I realized that she was not being truthful about what was going on. But I had already burned all my bridges in Georgia, so I came up here to New York. It turned out that my brothers and sisters were actually in foster care, and my mother, unfortunately, wasn't really sick, but she had been involved in drugs. And after about a month of living in New York State, my introduction was, unfortunately, her being busted for a meth lab. And so for me, when I came up here, my whole thing was, I want to play football. You know, I want to play football. I want to be a quarterback. I hadn't had the opportunity to play football in high school because my grades were not where they needed to be. But I figured semi-pro football was pretty big up in this area, so I wanted to play football. And so, unfortunately, after my mom got arrested, those dreams kind of got sidetracked a little bit. I was actually living with my mom's mom for a little while up here, and I was playing for a semi-pro team that had attempted to start up in Potsdam, and I was practicing with them. Things were going pretty good, and then I remember showing up to a practice, and there was only 4 people there, and they said, well, the team's not going to happen this year. So that was my introduction as far as to New York State, but also to semi-pro football, which, Joey, I know you know my history a little bit as far as semi-pro ball is concerned, which I'm sure we'll get to it at some point during the program. But that's how I got up here. It hasn't always been the easiest. I spent a little time homeless, but everything happens for a reason. And, you know, if my story can help somebody, then that's all about.
Well, it sounds like you've done quite well for yourself, Elijah. I mean, you're gainful employment, and you're doing what you want to do, which is entertaining people. So you've come along. My weirdest thing, though, most of us are trying to get the hell out of New York State, and people like you are trying to come up. So I just can't. You're probably not all there to begin with, you know, if you want to come up to the North Country, because it gets damn cold up there. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. And, you know, they like to say that if you're in radio, you have to be a little bit crazy anyway, because you literally get paid to talk to yourself. So.
Oh, yeah. True. Very true. Very true.
Well, what's the joke about radio that I've heard that to be a good radio announcer, you put a bunch of marbles in your mouth and you try to talk, and every day you take one marble out of your mouth. Then once you've lost all your marbles, then you're a radio announcer.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one. I haven't heard that one, but I'm sure that's true.
That's an old Sandy Cook one right there.
Well, Elijah, I mean that's an interesting pathway, and it seems like obviously you're happy with the North Country, you're happy with your job. So, you know, and Dave just mentioned Sandy. So what's it like? I mean, you probably didn't know Sandy, you probably didn't get a chance to listen to him, but I mean, you took over for a North Country. We called him the voice of the North Country. So, you know, what did you feel any pressure? Or, I mean, you probably didn't because you didn't know him, but there must be a little bit. I mean, I've been in your studio. There's signs of Sandy still in your studio. So, you know, how's it feel taking over for him?
So there's a ton of pressure, and I view it as good pressure because, you know, the show, the station, it means something to people. You know, if it was a radio station that didn't mean anything to anybody, there wouldn't be any pressure. So I view that as a good thing, that it means something, and it's my job to keep making sure that it means something to folks here in the area. As far as me and Sandy are concerned, I did know Sandy a little bit, and it's kind of weird in a way, my interactions with him. So whenever I first came up here and I was finally getting integrated into the North Country and starting to, you know, learn people's names and have them know who I am, I would actually see Sandy at like every single North Country event. And you guys know that better than I do. He was at everything. And so I would see him at the events, and he would make a point, even though I didn't know him that well, he'd make a point to have me come over to his table, ask me how I was doing, and like show me a little bit of how radio worked. And again, I didn't know this man at all. And so him and I had these different interactions about 7 or 8 times before he ended up passing away. And the last interaction that I had with him was actually doing an interview. And I was doing an interview for an event I was doing to raise money for the Boys and Girls Club in Messina, which is now Messina Pals. And him and I went on the air for about 8 minutes. We talked about comic books. Of course, he talked about Archie. I talked about Batman. It was a great conversation. And it's moments like that where I go back to what I said earlier. Everything happens for a reason. And I will say this, if I would have known that I would be doing this job now, I would have asked way more questions. But when you come into my studio, you'll notice on the front door, it actually says in memory of Stanford T. Cook. And that was something that was really important to me to put up there because, you know, for me, again, the station means something to people. He meant something to people. And I just want to honor the man's memory and hopefully give him something to smile about. I know he's smiling up there about his Buffalo Bills. So there's that.
That's for sure. Sandy Cook, I want to give us a couple Sandy Cook plugs here because we've known Sandy Cook for years. He did a Dave Bartlett's mother owned a newspaper in Fort Covington, the Sun, and he did a blog in there for the sports and that. And when I got done coaching and I wanted to go into broadcasting, the first one I went to was Sanford T. Cook. I went to WMSA, and literally a couple times a week for probably about 2-3 weeks. And I'd sit with him and watch what he did. And then he would help me on my computer with the programs that I needed to use for cutting, what's the word I want to say? Cutting songs and getting the things shortened up so you can prepare for broadcast. So, and the man had great patience with me, I'll tell you that. So he was enormous for everybody in the North Country, and he was the guy that you got all the scores from the next morning for all the sports in the area. So I'm assuming, and I apologize, I haven't listened to your show, Elijah. I assume that you're probably doing some of the same routines in your program.
I'd like to think so. I certainly try to get every sport that I can out there. Obviously I'm a big sports guy. I love sports. Some would say I love sports a little too much, but I try to make sure I cover every angle that I possibly can. And usually, what I do after my show is concluded is I will go on YouTube or I will go on ESPN and I will watch the announcers. And the way that I watch it is not so much for entertainment, but it's more of a, how are they attacking this story? And how can I take that angle and either make it better, make it different, and how can I present that to folks? Because in radio, as I'm sure you know, Pete, and I'm pretty sure Joey knows as well, you don't really hear from people when you're doing it right. It's when you do something wrong that you hear the most feedback per se, and that's just a thing of the business. So for me, I'm just trying to make people think about things a little differently with the takes that I have, and I try to make sure I get every score in there as possible. And if I know something about local sports, then I'll say it. If I don't, then I don't try to be an expert.
Yeah, one thing I think all of us do in this business, in media or whatever we do, is we watch other people and we take a little bit of what they do and try to make it our own to a certain extent, try to create something that is ours. So I understand completely where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to be able to go through and see how a Stephen A. Smith might attack something versus a Colin Coward versus a Skip Bayless, because they're all different. And I'd like to think that I'm starting to hit my stride as far as melding those things together and, like you said, making it my own.
Elijah, a little history lesson for you is you probably know this show only as you've seen it here, the Zoom and recording, and we're on YouTube. Well, when I first had this idea, the first person I talked to was not Pete. It was Sandy Cook. Mm-hmm. I had went to Sandy and said, I really think some sort of show like this would work in the North Country. And at the time, the first thing you thought of then was local radio. So I went to the King. I went to Sandy and mentioned it to him. He didn't say it was a bad idea. In fact, he thought it was a good idea, but he said, I don't think you want to do it on radio. You don't want commercial breaks. You don't want that stuff. You want to be able to go tell your story. And so that's when I went to Pete, because Pete had just started up his own little broadcasting business. And when we first started this show, we used to sit and just do it audio. There was no Zoom. There was no video. And actually, I think Sandy might have been our second guest, Pete. I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was a great show. I remember that.
Yeah, it was. So in a roundabout way, I mean, Sandy's got his paw prints on this show a little bit, because he was the first person I talked to when I had this idea. It wasn't Pete. I went to Pete after I talked to Sandy. So, anyway, so what's the state of radio right now as you see it? And when I say the state of radio, I'm talking small station like yourself, the AM dial. What do you know? What do you see? What do you see coming down the line in the future? Because there's so many outlets now to listen, and there's just so many. It used to just be you get in your car, you turn on the radio, but now you got XM, you got satellite, you've got all the apps on your phone, Pandora and iHeart and all that stuff. So what a challenge it must be nowadays in the world of AM radio. Talk a little about what you've learned and what you see coming down the road.
So for me, what I've learned is actually a couple things. One is that you were just talking about having a show without commercial breaks. I can definitely understand why that advice was given to you, because in radio, it's a beautiful thing. The relationship between the host and the audience, it's a beautiful thing. So I don't want to misconstrue that. But one interesting thing that folks might not realize is that when people are listening to the radio, I have to keep in mind that they could be half listening. Maybe they're listening to me while they're getting ready for work, or maybe they're listening to me on the way to work. But sometimes they're not going to catch every single thing I say. So the folks that I have tuning in at 6 a.m. are different than the folks that I have at 7 a.m. and so on and so forth. And it's on a very rare occasion that I have somebody from 6 a.m. all the way through 10 a.m. And I can tell you that whenever I get that phone call and they say, Elijah, we heard you say that story 3 times, it actually makes me happy because I say, okay, good. So which one did you like the best? I'll try to make sure that I do it that way next time. But as far as AM radio is concerned, I think for a station like WMSA, I think we're in really good shape. One of the things that I did when I took over the program was I noticed that there was a lack of community content as far as folks coming in and talking on behalf of different organizations. And so I took it upon myself to book for my show, but also book for Donnie Despaw's show, who comes on after me. And between my show and Donnie's show, we bring in about 30 community organizations a month to talk about different things going on in the area. And that was a big thing for me because I don't know everything that's going on in the Seaway Valley. If I tried to know everything that was going on in the Seaway Valley, I might have a meltdown. So why not bring in the folks who actually know it, deal with it every single day, let them be the stars of the show, which is why we call that segment our community co-star, because my show is called The Drive-In after the old school drive-in theaters. But I think because of that addition and because we're constantly giving new information that is local and needed, I think we'll be around for a very long time. I will say I am curious to see how things go post-COVID, because there was a lot of radio stations that were tasked with staying on the air no matter what to provide these, these updates and things that we're doing currently. And unfortunately, the small business climate has kind of shrunken. And that's where a radio station like WMSA makes the majority of our sponsorship dollars, is through those local businesses. So obviously, I'm hoping, as well as I'm sure you guys, that everything will come back to some sort of normal soon enough. But I will be very curious to see how that affects the landscape of radio, because again, it's not the big corporations that are paying to make sure guys like me can stay on the radio. It's the local businesses busting their tails to make sure that happens.
And WMSA for years has always been a community radio where they go out to the community too. And because of the time we're in with this COVID, that's restricted a lot of people doing their jobs properly. I mean, I'm sure a couple times a week you probably want to go out in the community and do a broadcast, and you just can't do that right now.
Yeah, I love getting out in the community. Usually we would be getting out to about 9 different radiothons a year. And this past year, I believe I've only ended up doing one of them. And I will say that when we do radiothons, it really brings home the point of the power of radio, because I did not realize how these radiothons came together before I did my first one. And I can tell you that there was one year where I believe we ended up raising close to, well, over $100,000 for local charities throughout the 9 different radiothons we did. So people are still listening, people are still giving, but you're right. Because of COVID, it's been a little difficult to get out to those events. And I love getting out to the events. I love meeting people because, again, I spend 4 hours a day hoping that somebody's listening. Otherwise, I'm getting paid to talk to myself. So when I get out there and I get to meet somebody and they say, hey, I like this, or even the people that come up and they say, I don't like this, either way is okay with me because I know they are listening, which side note here, side funny thing for you guys. It's always a kicker to me when I'm out in the community and I get those people that maybe don't like my show. For whatever reason, something I say, the way I do it, they don't like it, okay? It cracks me up because the business I'm in, you can't see me. So when they come up to me, they're very unfiltered about Elijah Winfrey. They'll tell me exactly how they feel about Elijah Winfrey. And then when I tell them that I'm Elijah Winfrey, there's a funny dynamic there. So I always appreciate that.
Well,
Well,
I've always been told I have a face for radio, Elijah, so I don't know what they tell you. So,
And that's
Well, I'm
borderline.
hoping they tell me something different because outside of radio, I also do movies. In fact, I have a movie coming out in March that we film locally, and I'm very excited about it. So hopefully everybody will go check it out. It's called Ballad of Billy Badass. It's something I've been working on for 6 years. I wrote it, I directed it. I'm also in it for a little bit. I play a bad guy, so it'll be interesting. And that's also something that cracks me up because unfortunately, I have folks that call me and they say, I can't wait to see your movie. And then I have to think about the guy that I play in the movie and how different that is than the person they hear on the radio. So hopefully that doesn't get me in trouble, but we'll see.
I would say in your business, Elijah, all you radio announcers, if somebody's coming up to complain about your show, wouldn't the first thing you probably say is, well, why are you listening? I would take that as a compliment because
Right,
why
or
are you listening?
Right, or at least you're listening, you know?
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
Thanks for listening.
yeah.
Yeah, that's usually what I say, you know, because after I say, well, I'll be sure to let them know, and they say, you do that, and I say, well, you just let them know yourself. That 30-second pause, I usually say, well, thank you for listening and have a good day. So
Well, obviously, we know your number one segment of the month is when I come on. But
Of
after
course.
that, what are your? I knew Pete would love that. What are your? Talk about some of your other community people that come in and do what I do to give an update on the business that they're involved in.
So we usually have the town supervisor of Messina come in. We also have the mayor of Messina. We have other athletic directors come in from time to time. We have Messina Music Friends, which is an organization that raises money for the music program in Messina. So they'll come in, they'll talk about different fundraisers they have going on. Obviously, right now that's a little bit lax because of COVID, but generally, like they're very, very busy all throughout the month. We also have CCOM come in, and I get to talk with Jerry Manor, the man, the myth, the legend, Jerry Manor, about all things finances. I usually learn something that I'm doing wrong during that segment, so I try to make sure to apply that to my own personal life. We also have, folks come in from the hospital and talk. We really pride ourselves on getting everybody that we can to the table, because the way that I look at it is it's not about me, it's about us. So the more that I can get folks on the radio, the more that I can get folks in their organizations on the radio, the better we all are for it.
Well, and you mentioned Jerry Manor, and that was something I was thinking of when you were talking about the COVID situation. I mean, that's something WMSA is missing right now is Messina Red Raider hockey with the voice of North Country hockey and Jerry Manor. I mean, I'm sure he's missing it. We had him on our show way back when we started this thing back up in the spring. But that's got to be something that the people of Messina are missing greatly.
Oh, for sure. I certainly miss it. And I'm not a huge hockey fan, which I know I probably shouldn't say that, but I'm not a huge hockey fan. I've certainly learned a lot about it as we've been going on, but I'm even missing it. I'm missing hearing, the Red Raiders win a bunch of games, which is what they usually do, and Jerry being all excited about it. So I do miss that. So, which actually, you guys might get a kick out of this. I'm not sure. And I know I keep telling stories, but I actually had to do SUNY Canton hockey one time. I had to announce SUNY Canton hockey. So football guy who knows not a lick about hockey had to do a hockey game. And the first thing I said was, the puck was intercepted. The skates were on the field. And then they got in a scuffle, and I said, well, I don't know who did it, but somebody said something about somebody's mama. And whenever I got home, our program director said that was entertaining, but that was not how you call a hockey game. So I haven't done it since.
Especially now you're a guy in the North Country, you better get to know hockey real quick. I'll tell you that right now. That's a big sport up there.
Exactly.
So getting back to our program when we first started, like Joey was talking about, we had Sandy on, but when we first started this, we used to go to bars and set up in bars.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of intermissions, and during that intermission, of course, we'd have some cold beverages. Sandy Cook was one of our most, I mean, Sandy had one of these memories that was phenomenal. He never forgot anything, never had to write anything down. We just had a steel trap for a mine, and everything that went in there stayed there. We did I want to say, Joey, it was an 1.5-hour show with him with,
Oh yeah.
with breaks, and we could have done 2, 3, 4 more hours with him. So,
Yeah.
Phenomenal man. Big shoes for you to fill, that's for sure. But I think you'll find your path real well in Messina. It sounds like you are.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, and I'm certainly trying to continue to make sure the show and the radio station means something to folks for a long time. And it's not just me. That's something that I like to tell folks too, is that if you like what I do, you like what you hear, it's not just me. I have a great support staff around me. One of those people is actually Julianne Fowler. She's been a salesperson at the radio station for forever. She was there through all the times with Sandy and before Sandy a little bit. Donnie Despaw comes on after me. He helped train me. Todd Truex. The list goes on and on. But I usually like to let people know, if you like anything I do, it's not just me. I've got a great team around me that says, Elijah, that sounds good, or Elijah, come on now, they don't have skates on a field. But either way, they make sure that I'm well taken care of and that I sound the best that I possibly can. So I wouldn't be here without them.
So we're getting short on time. But I want to bring up a few more things. You brought up earlier about semi-pro football. Now, is that the one that's based out of the Watertown area loop, or am I mistaken?
So the team that I was a part of the Carthage Revolution for a brief period. Then I was a part of what was the North Country Warriors, which was that team out of Potsdam that unfortunately folded before the season started. And then, of course, I was a part of the Seaway Valley Venom. And that organization, I was actually a quarterbacks coach for them for a few games. Then I became the head coach. And then I became the owner of the team for a year before we passed it on to my father-in-law and mother-in-law. And they've now reinvented the organization to be the Northern New York Grizzlies, and they're hoping to play this season. But we'll see how that all goes. But tons of stories there from my semi-pro days if you want to hear them.
You got one that sticks out?
Yeah. So when my wife and I joined the Venom, they were a team in their inaugural season. They had played 3 games. And unfortunately, they had given up at halftime or conceded at halftime for 2 of those games. In the final game, they went and they played a team out of Albany. And I was actually on that trip with them to the team in Albany. This was back in 2015. And I remember we lost that game 88-0. And on the way home, I was just kind of like, well, that was an experience. And then going into that off season, we only had 6 players left. And so my wife, a lot of credit to her, she helped raise a lot of money so that we could have a 2016 season. And I spent the majority of my time trying to find a coach. But unfortunately, because of things that had happened with semi-pro previous to that, there wasn't really a lot of people that wanted to come out and be the head coach. So I ended up having to do it. And so the first game that we played the Plattsburgh North Stars. We lost that game 27-0. But to me, that was a huge improvement from 88-0. And then the second game we played against a team from Mohawk Valley. We lost that game 12-6. So at that point, I'm feeling pretty good about where we are as a team, because I'm saying, well, we were 88-0, then we went 27-0. Now it's 12-6. So let's see what happens. So It was our first road game of that season. We went down to play the Watertown Red and Black. And I had told the team that week, look, guys, this is a big deal. You know, Watertown Red and Black, they're always on 7 News. You guys are probably going to get some TV time. They're going to have a lot of fans in the stands, so be ready. Well, we get down there, and their locker rooms were about a half mile from the field for the visitors. So that was already a disadvantage from the get-go, okay? But one of our guys had made sure that 7 News was going to be there, and we were going to have an interview. So they're out getting ready for us to come out on the field for our warm-up time, and they're filming. And whenever I get to the field, of course, I'm nervous anyway because I wasn't trying to be the head coach, but I had to do it. So I'm looking around, and I noticed something. We didn't bring any footballs to the field. So as 7 News is out there filming, they're filming my guys playing invisible football to warm up the game, literally throwing it at each other, this non-existent football. It was crazy. But my one thing that I did enjoy from that experience was just that I got the opportunity to give, you know, these gentlemen 18 and over the ability to play the game they love again. And even though we lost every game, to me, that was the thing that really stood out the most. And we got tons of memories. You know, I'm a big Texas Roadhouse fan. So every time we went for a road game, I made sure we stopped at every single Texas Roadhouse possible. But that's just one of the stories. There's plenty more for another date. But yeah, we were out there playing with invisible football. So if you find that footage, you know, you'll have a good laugh.
Nice.
Invisible football.
Well, Elijah, I know you're young, and I know 25 years ago, 30, oh God, it's 35 years ago. I lived in Watertown, and Watertown Red and Black at some point in our lives, for Pete, Dave, and I, much older than you, they were a big deal. They were a big deal at one point. I think it was called Empire 8 Football League, or I can't remember what it was called, but
Empire Football League.
Empire Football League. And yeah, they were a big deal. They were the Saturday night draw in Watertown. It was huge. They got a big crowd. So
Them and the Messina Warriors.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Messina Warriors. Yes. Who have been brought up on this show. I think Jerry Mahoney mentioned them, but when he was on, mentioned the Messina Warriors. So
yeah.
Well, Elijah, what was the name of this movie? The Ballad of Billy Badass?
Yeah, Ballad of Billy Badass. It comes out in March. You should be seeing some newspaper articles on it here in the coming weeks, but it's been 6 years working on it. It's a feature-length movie. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes, so I hope it's really good. Otherwise, you got a 2 hour and 5 minute nap. So there you go.
Well, what's the avenue we're going to be able to watch this on? Is this a big Netflix premiere that we need to be looking for?
It could be. It could be in the coming months, but right now what we're starting it out as is we're going to be selling it on a service called Vimeo for $7.99. And, you know, I'm not trying to make $1 million off of this, but I am trying to make a little bit of money so that we can keep making movies in this area. It's a huge passion of mine. And I really, honestly, I think we got something special with this movie. So I think folks will like it, but if it had a rating, it would be rated R due to the violence and the language. So it's not like you're going to be getting nice Elijah from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's a little bit different personality for me.
Well, when you write the next script, get a part for Pete, Dave, and I. We'll be glad to offer our great acting services.
Yeah, the 3 old guys sit at the bar. That's
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
As Chris Engel, one of your radio cohorts, he likes to call us the grumpy old men. So maybe we grumpy old men 4 or something.
I mean, it sounds like it writes itself, so I'll make sure to hold you to that.
Well, Elijah, we really appreciate you coming on our program. We wish you nothing but the best at WMSA for many years.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's going to be it for tonight, everybody, here on ESS, Empire State Sports, and the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. For Joey Rion, Pete Goslaw, Dave Barlett, and our special guest, Elijah Winfrey. Good night, everybody, and stay safe.